Something happened in that Senate hearing that almost no one caught in the moment, but once you see it, you can't unsee it, because Adam Schiff wasn't defending himself. He was defending the last remaining guardrail that keeps power in check. And the way he did it, that sent a chill through the room. From the second Schiff leaned into the microphone, you could tell this wasn't going to be just another speech. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lash out. Instead, he did something far more powerful. He told the truth about what he witnessed during that confirmation hearing.
Rappelling from a Black Hawk helicopter for a military-style assault on an apartment building in a major city, the zip tying of children. What was the legal basis for this? I heard my ranking member ask that very simple question, that completely appropriate question. If that's not an appropriate oversight question, I don't know what an appropriate oversight question is. And the response was not just to refuse to answer the question, but it was to attack the character of the ranking member and to insult him. And then when it was Senator Whitehouse's turn to ask a question, he asked a very legitimate oversight question about a FBI undercover operation in which reportedly $50,000 was paid to the White House border czar prior to him becoming the White House border czar, but with the expectation that he would be helpful in arranging contracts when he became the White House border czar. What happened to the money? A perfectly legitimate oversight question. And rather than answer that question, in a closed investigation, not an open investigation, but a closed investigation, she simply attacked Senator Whitehouse personally. And I heard another one of my colleagues ask, what was the legal basis for blowing up ships in the Caribbean? Reportedly, the Justice Department wrote an opinion justifying blowing up ships in the Caribbean. A perfectly legitimate oversight question, and the response was another personal attack. These, what were apparently canned, written personal attacks in advance. I wouldn't bother with the attacks on me. I've grown all too accustomed to them for the last 8 years. But if members of this committee can't ask those serious questions and get serious answers, we can't do oversight. I'm new to this committee. I spent about a decade on the House Judiciary Committee. I never saw a hearing like this with a cabinet officer, and if I did and some Democratic cabinet officer were to personally attack each of my Republican colleagues, I would call for a stop to it. It would be disgraceful. And I understand the reluctance to criticize on your side of the aisle one of the Republican cabinet members. But if this becomes the template for future hearings, we won't be able to do any oversight, and things will just degenerate. These questions deserve answers. I would expect that if troops were rappelling from helicopters in any city, in any of your states, and hog-tying children, you would want to know the legal basis. And so would I. We are going to submit for the record in written form the questions that the Attorney General refused to answer. I would hope, Mr. Chairman, you would join us in submitting those questions. They will have a much better chance of being answered if you join us in submitting those questions. But I would hope also in the future that if a witness, rather than respond, simply attacks our members, that it be stopped. That the witness be instructed to either answer the question or to state why they're refusing to answer the question, but to refrain from personal attacks on the members of this committee. That would be my request. And Mr. Chairman, I'm really grateful to be on this committee. And I appreciate every interaction I've had with you. You have, in our personal interactions, always been eminently fair. If I didn't think that you were of that character, I wouldn't even raise this because there wouldn't be a point. But I would ask that we not have another hearing like that one, and that you join in our legitimate oversight requests. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I thought that I set the decorum for a hearing, oversight hearing, when I said before we asked the director of the FBI any questions or any statements, that we should, both sides, treat each other with respect. And I even said to Patel, if you don't get a chance to answer your questions, I'll give you an opportunity after the senators finished for a few minutes to respond whatever you didn't get a chance to say. And you know how that meeting turned out. And particularly from your side of the aisle, a lot of strong statements about the FBI director. Whether they were legitimate or not is beside the point. It didn't follow the decorum, and obviously the director of the FBI didn't follow the decorum. So I don't know what more I can do than plead with my people who are fellow senators to follow a certain decorum, and I assume it would be followed on the other side. I don't appreciate the insults that went to Democrat members, particularly where they were wrong, but after seeing how senators handled the FBI director, I guess I felt that just let the show go on the way the senators wanted to go on. And that's what developed as a result of it. That may be a weak excuse for what happened that day, but I thought things didn't work out the way I expected them to when the FBI director was here, and some of the people on your side of the aisle were some of the ones that were screaming and yelling and talking over the FBI director. Meeting adjourned.
Piece by piece, moment by moment, until the entire room had no choice but to confront the reality they'd been trying to ignore. Because what he described wasn't just disrespect. It was the systematic breakdown of oversight in real time. He started by explaining what it felt like to sit quietly through hours of testimony, listening to every question and every answer, or in this case, the complete lack of answers. Senators were asking some of the most basic responsible oversight questions imaginable. Questions any official should be prepared to address without hesitation. Questions about the legal basis for extreme tactical operations that left families zip-tied in their own homes. Questions about money that reportedly changed hands during undercover operations. Questions about whether the Justice Department secretly justified blowing up ships in a foreign region. These weren't traps. They weren't political stunts. They were the exact kind of questions Congress exists to ask. And Schiff made that crystal clear. But instead of answering, the nominee did something shocking. She attacked. Not the question. Not the policy. Not the facts. She went after the senators themselves personally, directly, repeatedly. And Schiff pointed out something subtle but devastating. These weren't spontaneous reactions. These attacks were prepared. Written in advance. Ready to fire at anyone who dared ask for the truth. That's when Schiff stopped speaking as a Democrat or a senator and started speaking as someone who had spent a decade on one of the most important oversight committees in government. He said he had never, not once, seen a hearing like this. Not even close. And you could tell he meant it. Because there was a quiet seriousness in his voice, the kind that makes everyone stop shifting in their chairs and actually listen. He reminded the room that if you can't ask what legal authority justified a military-style raid in a peaceful city, then oversight is dead. If you can't ask where taxpayer money went in a now-closed investigation, then transparency is meaningless. If you can't demand clarity about operations carried out in other regions without getting mocked or attacked, then checks and balances are gone. Schiff wasn't defending the senators who were insulted. He was defending the system itself, the system that keeps any administration, any official, any agency from deciding their power is above scrutiny. And then he did something even more surprising. He put the responsibility right back on the committee's leadership. Not with anger, not with blame, but with a calm challenge. He said he hoped the chairman would join them in submitting the unanswered questions in writing. He explained that bipartisan support would dramatically increase the chances of getting real responses. And then he made a final request that witnesses who refused to answer questions be stopped and forced to either explain their refusal or actually address the inquiry. Instead of launching yet another personal attack. It was a request rooted in respect for the institution, not politics. But when Chairman Grassley responded, something became painfully clear. Instead of promising to protect the integrity of the process, He tried to excuse what happened. He said senators on the other side had raised their voices during a previous hearing, so he didn't feel he could intervene this time. He admitted the decorum broke down. He admitted the insults were wrong. And then he basically said, "What do you want me to do? Everyone's yelling." That was the moment everything clicked into place, and Schiff's warning landed like a weight on the table, because Schiff wasn't simply troubled by what happened to him or his colleagues. He was alarmed by what it meant for the future. What Grassley framed as an unfortunate breakdown, Schiff recognized as a dangerous precedent. Because once witnesses figure out they can avoid accountability by launching attacks, once they learn that no one will stop them, once the chair shrugs and says, "Well, the last hearing was bad too," then oversight becomes a performance, not a safeguard. And Schiff, with the clarity of someone who had watched this pattern grow for years, explained why that matters. When officials stop answering questions, it's a sign they no longer fear consequences. When they start treating lawmakers like enemies instead of representatives of the people, it means the system designed to restrain executive power is slipping. He reminded everyone watching that this wasn't about one comment, one argument, or one bad day. It was about a culture shift, a slow, quiet erosion of norms that used to hold government together. Because it's not the dramatic moments that break a democracy. It's the small, repeated acts of disregard, the mockery of oversight, the refusal to explain actions, the use of personal attacks as shields against accountability. Schiff's message was simple but devastating. If this becomes normal, we lose the ability to govern ourselves. And he was right, because oversight is not optional. It's not symbolic. It's the only mechanism that ensures that the people, through their elected officials, still have a say in how power is used, money is spent, and laws are enforced. What made his warning even more striking was the way he delivered it. He didn't yell. He didn't grandstand. He spoke like someone who understood exactly how dangerous this moment was, and how easily it could be ignored or brushed aside. He spoke like someone who had seen the guardrails bending for years and knew they were one bad hearing away from breaking. And when he turned to Grassley and said that he wouldn't even be making this appeal if he didn't trust the chairman's integrity, it wasn't flattery. It was a reminder that the chairman had the power to fix this, to draw a line, to stop the decline. But Grassley's answer revealed a sad truth. Even the people in charge of defending the process feel powerless to preserve it. He admitted he tried to set the tone. He admitted he expected better. And then he admitted he simply let the hearing spiral because he didn't think intervening would make a difference. That resignation might be the most dangerous part of all. Because when leadership stops trying to enforce standards, the standards disappear. When witnesses see there are no consequences for disrespecting Congress, disrespect becomes the norm. When officials realize they can dodge every question by attacking the person who asked it, the truth becomes optional. And that's the real reason Schiff's statement matters. Not because he was insulted, not because his colleagues were attacked, but because he described in detail a process falling apart in front of our eyes. He warned that if future hearings look like this, oversight will collapse completely. Not figuratively, not symbolically, literally. The committee will lose its ability to check power, question decisions, or demand accountability. And when that happens, government stops working for the people and starts working for itself. This wasn't a partisan speech. It was a constitutional one. A reminder that institutions are only as strong as the people who defend them. And Schiff did something rare. He defended the institution even when it would have been easier to stay quiet or just complain about personal attacks. The truth is, what happened in that hearing wasn't a minor breach of decorum. It was a signal. A warning that the culture of accountability is being replaced by a culture of impunity. And the fact that personal attacks were prepared ahead of time tells you everything you need to know about the mentality behind it. The goal wasn't to inform. It wasn't to clarify. It wasn't to answer. It was to discredit and intimidate. But Schiff refused to let that slide. He reminded everyone that senators deserve answers not because of who they are, but because of who they represent. The people. The ones paying for these operations. The ones living in the cities where these raids happen. The ones whose tax dollars fund these covert missions. The ones who expect transparency, honesty, and respect. By the time he finished, the room felt different. Quieter. More aware. Because his warning wasn't dramatic, but it was undeniable. And that's exactly why you're seeing more moments like this go viral. Not because people love political drama, but because deep down everyone can feel something shifting. Something heavier than normal partisanship. Something that feels like an institution fraying at its edges. This hearing wasn't just another tense exchange. It was a glimpse into what happens when accountability is treated like an inconvenience instead of a constitutional duty. And if you're someone who believes that government should still answer to the people, if you think oversight should be more than a stage show, if you believe transparency still matters, then don't look away. Don't tune out. And don't let moments like this fade into the background. Because this is where the real fight for democratic accountability is happening. Not in speeches, not in slogans, but in hearings where truth either survives or gets silenced. And if you want to stay updated on every moment like this, every clash, every confrontation, every time someone tries to avoid answering to the people, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and stay with this channel. The more people who understand what's happening in these rooms, the harder it becomes for anyone to hide from it.